All right, good morning, everyone. As everyone's popping in, today's meeting will be recorded. So if Microsoft does what it says it will, you should automatically get the recording sent to you after this call. If for some reason that doesn't happen, don't worry. We're going to be then loading the recording on our website next week. If you're wanting to refer things to later or share it with another staff member, another grant writer on your team, this recording will be made available in the future as well. So I'm just gonna go ahead and jump in and get things started. For those of you who I haven't had the pleasure of meeting yet, my name is Jackie Christensen. I am the Community Impact Director here at Head of the Lakes United Way. I came aboard on the team about 11 months ago and kind of dove into looking at our investment process. And so I'm excited to share what we've got going on and kind of our future pieces with this. But first, I just want to cover a little bit about like what are we doing at Have Lakes United Way, right? A reminder for those of you who are old friends, what we're doing, and those of you who are new friends, kind of giving you an introduction of who we are. So, our mission at Have Lakes United Way is to strengthen our communities by uniting people and resources, with the vision of improving the health, education, and financial stability of every person in every community where we serve. Each United Way in the nation has their own unique mission and vision. While we're part of a larger collective of the United Way organization, and we have the support of that network with some of our initiatives, our funding is all very uniquely ours. We don't have access to a mythical larger pot, unfortunately. So every dollar that we raise is from our community. Every dollar that we give out is from those same communities. And so a little bit of a brief overview of what those communities are, and you're going to see this map a few different times today as we go throughout things. But our service area, we are proudly serving Ashland and Bayfield counties in Wisconsin, Lake and Cook counties up in the North Shore, Superior Douglas County, and Greater Duluth. So this is our service area. As you can see, it's a large and vast area, but we're also very proud to be an organization that is serving both Minnesota and Wisconsin. And so we really get to see the unique differences between those communities and also serve them as well. So a little bit about what we do. Many of you are probably familiar with our volunteer center. Thank you for those who use it and who are part of it. Zoe's on the call today, joining us as well. And so thank you for your involvement with that. Our engagement with the volunteer center with both nonprofits and with volunteers is we're back to pre-COVID numbers and in fact higher in some areas. So thank you to those who have been faithful users of the volunteer center to recruit volunteers, to recruit board members and committee members. We encourage you to continue doing so as we have volunteers who are looking for places to get involved in the community. Zoe's also been hard in working on creating cohorts for volunteer coordinators within those communities. So right now we have an Ashland and Bayfield County group, a North Shore group, and then also we're working with United Way of Northeastern Minnesota for like a Twin Ports and Iron Range. Kind of that opportunity for our volunteer coordinators to have some camaraderie, to be able to troubleshoot together, but then also share resources. We know that most volunteers aren't volunteering at just one organization, but also how can we do things smarter and not harder, which has just been a really great piece. From the Volunteer Center, that's where our volunteer appreciation passports have come out of. In the Ashland Bayfield County area, they're about to have an insert. We have some grant funding to do some volunteer promotion. So there'll be the bottom line, we'll have an insert of volunteer opportunities available in those communities. So we're really excited to continue those partnerships with you all. If you're wanting to get more involved with the Volunteer Center, please don't hesitate to have your staff that's in charge of your volunteers to reach out to Zoe. She loves sitting down with people and showing off what we're capable of helping people out with that. Be on Board is continuing. I'll share the Duluth dates here coming up, but with the next round for Duluth is in November. And we're finalizing dates for the next round in Ashland Bayfield counties to be in April. So we're really excited to continue doing those things. With a date coming up in November for the Twin Ports area for orgs that are in those service areas. If you have board member needs, please post them on the Volunteer Center because that's where we direct all of those attendees to go to if they're seeking board opportunities. We also have our community services program. This is our partnership with the AFL-CIO. This is providing resources and direct human services to union families through holiday assistance, emergency assistance, working on the Labor Day picnic, Construct Tomorrow, things like that. If you're a program that's wanting to connect with that audience a little bit more of union families or providing resources, please don't hesitate to reach out. Corey on our team would love to partner and work forward on that. And also, if you are an organization that does have a union, right? If you have staff that are members of unions and are needing extra support, especially as the holiday season comes up, of having their union rep reach out to us. We'd be happy to talk them through what services we have available and support them as well. Other initiatives that we've been working on. So our Stuff the Bus continued this year. In 2025, we collected over $15,000 worth of school supplies that went out in the Ashland, Superior, and Lake Superior school districts, as well as some to ISD 709 and some of our local youth serving orgs that I see on the call today. Our babysitting initiative, we just wrapped up our fall classes. We did 4 classes this fall of babysitting training for 11 to 17-year-olds using the American Red Cross curriculum. We have 77 kids who have gone through that training, ages 11 to 17, which is really great. They're learning CPR, first aid, basic how to take care of kids. And so we're really excited about that. We'll be continuing the classes in the spring. We just have to do a sit down to figure out what we have available for funding and then work on scheduling those classes. And our funded partners will be, folks on this list will be probably some of the first folks that'll find out when those classes are scheduled. We also dipped into disaster relief this year when Lake County had their wildfires this spring. We raised over $47,000 for that region. That'll be then going back into that area for wildfire prevention and resources for those communities around wildfires. And then 211. So Wild 211 hasn't been housed in our office since 2019. We're still working to strengthen its services. It's a great free referral service, and we're working with our statewide partners to further strengthen that relationship and further strengthen the resources that are available to members of the communities that we serve when it comes to 211. But the reason that most of you are on today is to talk about our community investment process and what our grant cycle is going to look like this year. So just some things I want to further reiterate. So the funds that are available for us to distribute are funds that are raised directly from the communities that we serve. And so that geographic region, all of the dollars have been specifically designated to support that region. Individual donors choose where their donation is going. And so then therefore we keep those funds local to those regions. So some application basics for this grant cycle. Applications will open November 1st and will close on January 2nd. That's that Friday of that week. No late applications will be accepted. So if you are somebody who is planning on taking off those last 2 weeks of December for holidays or to spend time with family, make sure you get your application in before that. So making sure that the form will shut off promptly at midnight on January 2nd. And so making sure that you get things submitted by then. We will be utilizing Microsoft Forms this grant round. We know that its downfall with Microsoft Forms is you can't save things as you go. So we'll be providing a basic Word document on the website as well that you can start working on that first draft. We know that a lot of folks who are writing grants already have that Word doc going, and so we'll be providing that with an outline of the questions and then the grading system that we use to evaluate those grants. Microsoft Forms, to be completely transparent, it's the cheapest and the free option. And so we're going to both step into using some more technology, but then also being budget conscious as well. Many of the grant questions will be coming from the Minnesota Common Grant. So we know that funders across the region, even outside of Minnesota, have been using those questions. And so a lot of our questions and processes will be based on the questions from there. So if you've already used that for programming, you can hopefully utilize old grants to help write this one. New this year is we'll also be doing a basic screening of applications before the panels are held. So making sure that grants are meeting the qualifications and that our panelists' times are worth the applications that they're having to read through. So we really want to be mindful of the volunteers who are reviewing grants, of making sure that they're reviewing high quality grants that have been submitted. Panels will be held in February. The dates we're still working on finalizing, but will be based on the number of applicants. We'll be talking a little bit more about what that process will look like, but we'll have a mix of depending on which geographic region you're in, if your panel's in person or if it is virtual. So basically, if you're in the Twin Ports, your panel will most likely be in person. If you're in the North Shore, Ashland Bayfield, it'll be virtual. That's mostly because we live in the upper Midwest and we are doing things in February. And so wanting to really be mindful of travel in those timeframes. Grant funding will continue to be for programs, not for entire organizations. So specifically looking at what programs you're doing out in the community and how you're meeting kind of the impact areas and other things that we'll talk about here in a second. And this grant cycle will be for 2 years of funding. So it'll be a 2-year cycle this year. So basic qualifications for the grants this year. So I'm going to cover each of these bullet points in future slides. So I'm going to go over them quickly and then we'll dive a little bit further in. The program must serve the community that you're applying for. It must fall into at least one of the 3 United Way impact areas, so health, education, or financial stability. And the program has a demonstrated effort in serving individuals experiencing ALICE. And you need to be a 501c3 or be an organization with a fiscal sponsor. So let's talk a little bit more about the geographic areas. So new this year is that you'll, instead of having applications be by impact area, we'll be having applications by geographic area. So I'll dive a little bit more further in that, but I also wanted to clarify what those geographic areas. So Lake and Cook counties is one area together. Superior and the entirety of Douglas County is a geographic area together. Ashland and Bayfield counties are one area together, and then Greater Duluth. And for my Duluth orgs, it is not the true Southern St. Louis County divide that you may be used to. It really is Greater Duluth. So it's Duluth, Hermantown, Proctor, Rice Lake, and then the associated townships. I'm not going to read through all of them, but you can see them listed there on your screens. That's what we mean by Greater Duluth. And then we have our 3 impact areas. These haven't changed since the last funding cycle. So these areas are health, education, and financial stability. This isn't a fully comprehensive list, but an idea of programmings that fit into each one. So for health, this would be access to affordable health care, mental health, health and wellness programs and services, substance abuse programs, resources for those with disability and chronic health issues, food assistance and nutrition education, services to help elders live independently, services for victims of violence. For education, again, not a comprehensive list, so some ideas would be development and enrichment programs, interventions for at-risk youth, youth-specific health, mental health and wellness programs and services, services to strengthen families, school readiness and early childhood education, anti-bullying programs. For financial stability, those program ideas could be emergency financial assistance, financial education and counseling, vocational and jobs programs, housing programs, and shelter and support. So again, those impact areas how they're defined have not shifted from the last cycle. And we'll have the comprehensive list that I just let out, that list I just read off, and this information will also be available on the website when the application is live. And lastly, I want to introduce Alice. So some of you may have heard us talking about Alice already, but I just want to introduce what Alice is. So Alice stands for Asset Limited Income Constrained Employed. It's a lengthy term to describe and data to prove what we already knew existed, and that's we know that there are lots of people who are working, who are struggling to make ends meet. Alice data provides more variables. We know that the poverty guideline formula is extremely outdated. It hasn't been updated since the 1960s. And the Alice data looks and dials down the issue for community. So you could even, if you were a neighborhood-specific organization, you could look up your zip code and see what is available. Anna, probably here in a little bit, will be throwing in the links directly to the Alice website for Minnesota and Wisconsin. But Alice was developed by United Ways of New Jersey to specifically look at what were the issues that they were seeing in their communities. And since then, it has further expanded and is kind of spread across the country. We've had this data available in Wisconsin for a while, and Minnesota signed on about a year ago. And so Alice is looking at everyone who doesn't have enough monthly income to cover the basics. And we know that that's nearly a third of our population. Folks who are working, struggling, often maybe don't qualify for some services because they don't meet those poverty guidelines, but are still needing help. Some of you may have heard this referenced by like the cliffs, or the benefits cliff or the benefits plateau, are similar concepts along with Alice. How you are serving this specific population will be asked in the grant application. And we understand that there are some programs out there that are restricted by other larger funding resources that are saying, hey, you have to be within the poverty guidelines. You have to be within 200%. And if that's you, we still want you to apply, right? So even if you're like, well, we're not necessarily exactly serving Alice, we can only serve those experiencing poverty, we still want you to apply. We want to hear, how are you serving this population? How are you serving those in our community who are experiencing poverty? And we want to also encourage folks to think outside of what restrictions maybe can be moved to be able to serve this greater population. Now, just because we're including this thing of like, hey, I think the fear of when we talk about Alice and that we're asking people to say, like, how are you serving this population, that we're going to be asking for data that maybe you're not collecting. And that's not the case. We know that the Alice experience can be explained and can be understood and can be seen without ever having to collect somebody's financial information. And we know that this can be demonstrated by stories and anecdotes and by experiences that you've seen from your clients or you've seen in the types of requests for need that maybe your organization has had. So don't fret if you're like, we don't collect this data, because that's not what we're going to be asking for. We're going to be asking more for the narrative behind what you've seen and experienced in the clients that you're serving. So let's talk a little bit about some of the process updates and changes. A lot of these changes were made by feedback from current and former funded partners. Throw out a thank to Liz, who preceded me, who did a lot of effort into and left a lot of great notes on what she wanted changes, and to Zoe and Anna on our team for working hard to collect information and feedback from participants in the last funding cycle. These are also changes that we're making to attempt to be more of a trust-based funder. We also we apply for grants for our own internal funding. And so some of these changes are based on our own experiences of filling out grants, of filling out a grant and being like, let's make sure we never do this, or let's make sure that we do this. And so we hope that these changes are welcome and that they make things easier for you as an applicant and also provide a little bit more of transparency and clarity and trust. So the first thing is that past grant performance is not a criteria for this funding cycle. We're starting off fresh. New applicants are welcome and encouraged to apply. Being a current funded partner does not guarantee future funding, and that lapsed partners are welcome to apply again. So if you're somebody who's on this call, and maybe you're not currently funded by us, but you want to be in the future, we want you to apply again. We know what the funding landscape is for nonprofits right now, and so we anticipate there's going to be an increase in requests. We also anticipate that there's going to be an increase in requests that we're unable to fill. And so we just really want to start off with just that trust piece of, like, there is a chance that if you are somebody who has received funding from us in the past, that you may not receive funding this upcoming cycle, just purely because of the volume of applications we're anticipating. And so we'll talk a little bit more about that doesn't mean that we still don't want to partner with you in other ways, and that we still won't have some of those other supports available for you that I'll talk about here in a bit. I alluded to this a little bit earlier, but applications will be based on geographic area, not impact area. So when looking at how our funding is structured, our funding is allocated by donors by geographic area, not by impact area. And so really wanting that to also reflect in how we're then giving it out. So how things will be working this cycle is each organization will fill out one application for each geographic region they're applying for versus each impact area that they're applying for. So if you are somebody who you're like, we've usually applied for 2 different impact areas, there's still 2 great programs. Can we still include them both in our Superior Douglas County application? You can. Just know that that funding is all then tied together. So it won't be that we'll choose to fund one program and not the other. It'll be either be both programs are funded or both programs are not funded. And so, and that's also up to you on what extra legwork you want to take on your back end of tracking things, and tracking your grant dollars for that. This also means that the panel process will be based on geographic region. So I alluded to this earlier. So our Greater Duluth panel will most likely be in person, with panelists who are hopefully comprised of individuals who are living, working, serving that community. Great Superior Douglas will also be in person with the same goal of having people in those areas. Our Lake and Cook counties and our Ashland and Bayfield counties will be done virtually. And that's also partially because there are large service areas where we know that the funded partners are not as close in physical proximity as they are in the Twin Ports service areas. And so wanting to be mindful of transportation time, but then also, like I mentioned earlier, being mindful that we're going to be doing this in an upper Midwest winter that, according to all the weather experts, is going to be a snowy one. So just wanting to be safe with that. Our funding will still be program-based. So funding will be based on, you'll be applying for a specific program and funding for that program. However, the funding for that program is it's unrestricted within that program. We want to know, when you're filling out your program budget, we want to know how much does that program really cost? What are all the expenses related to staff time and overhead costs? How much we want the full picture, right? Because that helps us to be able to advocate for you all in the future, with other funders and with other larger statewide organization, or for meeting with legislators to be like, people need more funding for staff time, or people need more funding for these other XYZ overhead costs. So please include all of that within your program budget. We're getting rid of character and word limits. Instead, we'll be using guidelines commonly used with the Minnesota Common Grant. So like an average answer for this question would be X amount of paragraphs. We also want you to use simple language, to be able to use the simple language and avoid acronyms and jargon to describe the work that you're doing. And that's just not easy to do with a character limit. As an organization with a long name, Head of Lakes United Way is a lot of characters. We get it, right? That piece of having to be creative in how you make an acronym or whatever. We want to make things as simple as possible for our panelists who are reviewing your application to be able to understand what you're talking about. And so the easiest way to do that is to remove those character and word limits. No more paper copies. Applications will be submitted through Microsoft Forms. You don't need to send us any paper copies of your application afterwards. Everything will be uploaded and done digitally. If you have any difficulties along the way, our staff is more than happy to help you. When the website with everything goes live next week, there will also be a link where you can schedule a 30-minute one-on-one with me. So if you have more questions that you want to process over a Teams call, we can screen share. Really want to be able to be as supportive as possible and help you through that process. The other piece too is no more guessing on what to ask for. This is something that we got feedback from people of like, what should my request be? What's the minimums, maximums? We understand a lot of other grants have that. And so I'm going to cover that on the next slide of what they are. So like I mentioned before, the amount of money available for each area is dependent on what we receive from donations. It's dependent on what we receive from our workplace campaigns. And so all areas will have a minimum of 2,500. And that's based on what we felt was a worthy grant based on the effort and time that it takes to go through our application process. And the largest amounts are based on the largest amount that an organization received in the last funding cycle in that region and in that area. So this is kind of what we've got out there for right now. The other thing too is I just want to clarify the funds that are available for each area, like I mentioned before, it isn't based on an algorithm or guessing work. It is what is designated by donors. At this point, we don't have the final numbers of what is available for each area because those numbers are currently sitting with our auditors. And so we'll hopefully have those come February. But just based on kind of basic predictions, we feel really safe and comfortable with these amounts at this time. And then we're also striving for a continued partnership. Like we want to continue to supporting you beyond the check, right? Whether or not you receive funding this cycle or you choose to apply, we want to continue supporting you in the ways that we have beyond the check. Whether it's through the volunteer center and getting active with those cohorts and posting opportunities, if it's sending board members through Be On Board or recruiting board members through Be On Board, or if you just need our help advocating for your clients through Alice, we want to be the best support we can be for our nonprofits. We also plan on making changes to our grant agreement to reflect this as well. So we made some minor changes this last funding cycle. So if you're a current funded partner, just some reminders. And if you're a future funded partner, here are some things that I know that we're changing. So there's going to be no more periods where you need to notify us if you're fundraising. We've actually removed that language from this last grant agreement. And there's also no more requirement to hold a United Way employee campaign. There's actually data that just came out last week about the nonprofit sector and how many nonprofit employees experience Alice. And so that's a part of that guiding decision. But however, if you're somebody who you really enjoy doing the employee campaign and you want to continue that, and you've been working with Robert or Sophie, please continue to do so. There's nothing wrong with that. However, if you've been doing it out of a feeling of obligation, please know that that's no longer the expectation. We're going to hopefully provide some more transparency and clarity on what this partnership will look like. Sarah, our president, and I have been doing some digging into like what we want that to look like, right? What we want to say, here's what we can provide to you as a funder, and then also a like, hey, as a funder, here's what we need from you. So providing some more clarity around that and from the get-go. So what's next? What can you look forward to? What are the next steps in the process? So applications will open on November 1st and it will close on January 2nd. As a reminder, no late applications. So make sure that you get things in on time. Please reach out with any questions during the application process. We want to hear from you. If there's a hiccup or if you need some clarification on something, please let us know. You can reach out to myself. If you're already working with another member of our team on another project or another way, you can reach out to them. They'll either answer your question or send you along to me as well. So we really want to be as open as possible to be able to answer questions as they come in. The other piece too is that we know that for some of you, you've served on panels. And so information will be live next week on how to participate in the investment panels. If you want to serve in a panel for a community you aren't applying for, let us know. We do ask that you aren't going to be serving on or none of your staff will be serving on panels for the communities that you're applying for. But we also know that there's lots of folks who it may be that live and work in one area, work in the other, or vice versa. You may have hometown connections to another service area. And so we welcome you to be a part of that as well. And then I also just want to share some upcoming events. So like I mentioned before, we have a next round of Be On Board is November 18th and 19th. The registration link is live on the front page of our website. And our next day of caring is December 3rd. So Zoe has already sent out emails to organizations on the Volunteer Center soliciting signups to sign up for projects for Day of Caring. If you are an organization who's done Day of Caring before, sign up. If you haven't done Day of Caring, sign up. It's a really great way to get people involved in a unique way for helping with big projects at your organization. I know for some orgs, that's when you save your painting projects or your stuffing projects. Also, the Winter Day of Caring is a common one for drives as well. So if you're already doing some sort of drive around the holidays for supplies or presents, you can use that as a Day of Caring project. You might have a business that adopts you and takes care of some of that need. So please do apply. All right, so question in the chat, the funding timeline. For example, we may apply for a school-based program. So I have to look at a calendar, Sarah, because I'm a visual person. So grants will start essentially, most likely will start June 1st, 2026, and then they would run through May 31st, 2028. So yeah, it would be appropriate to apply for the 2026, 27, and 27, 28 school years. Yeah. If anybody has any questions, now would be the time. I can't remember when I set this up, if I allowed you to come off chat or not, but feel free to enter in the Q&A if you can't, or enter into the chat. So can one organization apply for the same program in multiple geographic areas? Yes. So if your organization is serving multiple geographic areas, you can apply for multiple geographic areas. To clarify as well, that would also mean that you would have to participate in a panel for each of those geographic areas, because it would be that community then deciding if they want to fund that program. And if you are an organization that is applying for multiple geographic areas, you'd submit different applications. But the only question that would be different is, how are you serving the geographic area that you're applying for? So you'd be able to copy and paste everything and then just edit that one question. Any other questions? If you do have any feedback on the changes or anything that you have clarifying questions that maybe you don't want to put on a recorded webinar, feel free to send me an email, give me a phone call. We're really wanting to make some meaningful changes through this process, and to kind of help provide some clarity. So there isn't a maximum amount. So the maximum amount is per geographic region that an organization applies for. So theoretically, an organization, if they're applying in all 4 geographic regions, could apply for the maximum in each region, if that makes sense. I'll give folks time to ask questions if they have them. If you don't have any questions, this is all that I had for you today. Thank you so much for your time. Thank you for your continued partnership. We look forward to working with you through this grant process and through our other programs and initiatives. And best of luck to everyone. Yeah, thank you. All right. So great question, Sarah. For the funding amount guidelines, would the amount, for example, 2,500 be the total awarded per year or for both years? That would be per year. Brittany, Rob, I see you in there with do you need to include the logo on our letterhead and publications? We're like reworking of what that verbiage will be. So it'll basically be like, if it is a program and you're thanking your funders for that specific program, we want to be included in that. But you don't need to include us on everything. Um, So the question of can the panel approve at a lesser amount, or is it just an approval or a decline? Kristen, that is still like a hot button question that we've been going back and forth. I think at this point it'll probably be an approval or decline. It may be a lesser amount depending on the funds available, but we really want to make sure that we're making as much impact as possible with the funding that we're giving. So we're wanting to give people kind of what they're asking for. If we have two programs we apply for, would we apply for the maximum award for each or as a whole? So the applications this year will be one per organization per geographic area. So if you're applying if you're filling out and for example, if you're filling out an application for programming in Duluth and you have two programs that you're going to like squish into the same application, that maximum award would be that $40,000. It wouldn't be 80,000 because you included two programs. So Jill asked about screening for potential conflicts. Yes, we actually, Anna's been going through all of our archives. So she found a really great conflict of interest form from the 90s that we might be pulling back actually to screen out any potential conflict of serving on boards, having a partner, spouse, or someone that they're living with. Also serving on a board or volunteering to just kind of reduce any potential bias that would exist. Uh, Trying to scroll through to see if there's any questions that I miss. Does anybody have any questions that I missed at all? Anything else that you can think of? This has been great. All right, I'm going to hang on for just a little bit if anybody has any questions, but otherwise, feel free to sign off and take back the last 20 minutes that we had scheduled for this and enjoy your Thursday.